and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast from Agriland that keeps you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Louise Hickey and I'm joined today by journalists Francess McDonnell and Breffney O'Brien. Following adverse weather conditions, cattle being housed early and poor second yields, Agriland's Fodder Survey released yesterday heard reports from many farmers across the country who are facing a shortage on fodder. Francess, what did the results of the survey tell us?
Well, our survey, which attracted just over 2,000 respondents in 24 hours, shows that 34% of farmers are running short of fodder and 33% will need to purchase further fodder this year. I think the response to our survey in such a short space of time just shows how big an issue this is right across the country at the moment. Many farmers have told us that they now have to buy in fodder at a price that they weren't hoping to pay for it and are also considering selling off livestock earlier than planned because of the financial burden they are now under. Figures that we've seen this week indicate that farmers are currently paying between €35 to €50, depending on delivery costs for round bales. So in the survey, as you just mentioned there in the intro, Louise, farmers say the main reason for the fodder shortage across the country is really three key factors. We're looking at weather, having to house animals earlier, and poor second cut of silage. Now, the picture isn't uniform across the country as you would expect, but definitely in some areas we're seeing a lot of pressure on fodder supplies.
And was there a demand for straw from farmers shown in the survey as well?
Yes, this was a major theme right across the country. Feedback from farmers highlighted that the availability of straw is a major issue. They simply can't find it in some parts. And many farmers indicated to Agriland that they believe that the government's straw incorporation measure, better known as SIM, may be to blame for this. Now, SIM is a scheme under CAP which pays tillage farmers for chopping straw and incorporating it into the soil. And farmers were telling us this week that they think that's the reason why there is a shortage of straw.
And Francess, what is some of the reaction to this current shortage of fodder?
Farmers are super exasperated by the situation. For some, it's really just another cost that they can't afford. And let's face it, the weather last year was just disastrous in many aspects. And that was really evident for many when it came to the second cut of silage. So what farmers are saying is that they are really up against it this year. You know, some farmers who've never had a fodder shortage before are seeing that for the first time. And that just indicates exactly how desperate the situation is for some. You know, many said to us that they want to see further financial support from the government on the issue. So that's something that we're going to have to wait and see just what the reaction is now.
And just staying on this story for a moment, we also heard from the IFA's Dairy Committee chair this week who said that cash flow and fodder supplies are two of the biggest concerns currently on dairy farms.
Yes, Stephen Arthur highlighted that early housing of cows in some instances by up to 8 weeks in certain parts of the country has really decimated silage stocks. So we're coming in now to sort of spring area and cash flow is a major issue for farmers at this time. We've been hearing this right up and down the country. You know, we still see pressure on costs. Yes, they've decreased in some cases, but, you know, still farmers are facing difficulties on that front. And what Stephen Arthur was saying to us, look, you know, we're seeing a situation now where farmers really are on the edge in certain cases. Although he does believe there could be better signals coming from global dairy markets for 2024. So that's definitely a positive. Arthur is quite confident really that milk markets are looking like they're strengthening up. And this week we reported that the Ornua PPI was returning 37 cent a litre, while Lakeland also rose its milk price by 1.5 cent a litre.
Thanks, Francess. Now, while the weather proved to be constantly changing last year, causing fodder concerns, with 2023 also confirmed as the hottest year on record by Copernicus, this weekend is actually looking to be dry. This is just in time for the end of the closed period for slurry spreading. But the end of the closed period is not essentially a green light for farmers to go out spreading slurry. What does this mean, Francess?
Well, let's look at it because slurry spreading has been a big issue of contention for farmers with the weather in the last 12 months. Basically, the opening date for spreading slurry will depend on the county that the farm is located in. Counties in Ireland are split into 3 zones. So we've Zone A, Zone B and Zone C. Zone A is really Carlow, Cork, Dublin, Kildare, Kilkenny, Laois, Offaly, Tipperary, Waterford, Wexford and Wicklow. So farmers in Zone A will be permitted to spread organic fertiliser, that's both slurry and farmyard manure, from tomorrow. That's January the 13th. Farmers then around the country will follow in from that in Zone B and Zone C, which is January the 16th and February the 1st. Farmers in Zone A will also be permitted to spread chemical fertiliser from Saturday, January the 27th of this year. And of course, as we all know, the close period for spreading soiled water ended on December the 31st. So farmers are also now permitted to spread soiled water. It's all based on conditions permitting. We are seeing colder, drier weather coming in, which is good news. If we were to see further rainfall, that would be a big issue for our farmers, because we know that slurry storage is really an issue at the moment on farms, because obviously farmers have had to contend with a lot of wet weather. Storage slurry has been under pressure, and that's a key issue for farmers now at this time of year.
So with some more upbeat news now, the Department of Agriculture has confirmed that it issued scheme payments to farmers worth €11 million in the first week of 2024. Francess, what are some of these schemes that have been issued?
Well, two of the most important schemes are, of course, BIS and CRIS. And this week we've seen $4.4 million paid out to farmers under those schemes. The department said that the total payments for the 2023 payments under those schemes up to January 5th now stands at almost $794 million. Over 117,000 farmers have now received payments under these schemes. And as they've told us this week, it's not a moment too late. We all are very aware that controversy over late payments really dogged the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Charlie McDonnell, last year. And delays to farm payments were repeatedly slammed by farm organisations and politicians who pointed to not only the high costs facing farmers, but the uncertainty about when they were going to get paid and when that money was going to land in their bank accounts. Now, earlier this week, we were at the IFA's 69th AGM, and Minister McDonnell was very clear that he is working through the Farmers' Charter this year to avoid delayed payments. But this is going to be a really big test for the Minister in 2024. Will they get the payments into farmers' bank accounts when they are supposed to be there? And will the department be able to manage on that front? So farmers are definitely going to be keeping a very watchful eye on that situation.
Absolutely. Now, Board BIA launched its Export Performance and Prospects Report 2023-2024 this week. Francess, what is the value of Irish food exports looking like?
Well, it's not good news, really. No, it's not drastically bad news, but the value of Ireland's food, drink and horticulture exports was down 4% last year compared to 2022. And that's according to latest data from Board BIA. The value of Irish food exports for last year came to almost 16.3 billion. You may say that's an impressive figure, and it is, but it is a drop on the 2022 figure of around 16.7 billion. So not a massive drop, but we are seeing a fall back on what was a record-breaking increase of 22% on the 2021 figure. The figure for 2023 does remain higher than the export value of foods in 2019. So that's a positive. But the question really is, why did we see an export slump last year? Well, according to Board BIA, this was really down to the impact of inflation and the cost of living challenge, which continued to affect consumer spending last year, in addition to significant downward pressure on trade prices. Now, consumers here will tell us we don't see any fall on prices whenever we come to pick them up in the supermarket shelf. But on an export perspective, it's completely different. And let's just hear what the Minister for Agriculture has to say about exports to a key market for Ireland.
We remain hopeful that we will, that it'll be a speedy resumption of trade. We have been through this process before once, since we got access to China originally, and it was suspended. That was a long process, but that process involved going through the same process that's there now under the protocol, providing the epidemiological reports, going through those steps, and getting to the stage where they were absolutely reassured of the systems we've in place, and getting exports resumed. So I'm hopeful, and we have been hopeful from the outset, that given that we've been through that process before, that we could repeat it in a much more concise manner. So, we remain strongly hopeful that we will get a good outcome. Obviously, it's entirely in their hands, but that work is continuing.
Now, Agriland Technical Beef Specialist Breffney O'Brien joins me to discuss the report's insight on Irish primary beef exports in 2023. Breffney, what is the estimated total value of primary beef exports according to the report?
Yeah, Louise. So in 2023, the total value of Irish primary beef exports is estimated at 2.7 billion. Now, this is an increase of 2% in value terms over 2022, according to the report.
And Breffney, what were some of the strongest markets for beef supplies?
Okay, so obviously, firstly, the UK was the strongest market for Irish beef in 2023, and primary exports grew by 10% in value to reach an estimated 1.3 billion to this market. Irish beef exports to the UK grew by nearly 6% in terms of volume during the first half of the year. So after the UK, of course, then you had the continental European markets. Now, these were slightly lower in 2023 at an estimated value of 1.3 billion. After, I suppose, the European Union, then you had exports to international markets. They're estimated to have declined by 24% to €128 million. But this represents a 5% share of the total Irish beef exports in value terms.
Thanks, Breffney. And finally, yesterday marked the first official public open day for the 2024 BT Young Scientist. Over 1,100 secondary school student finalists gathered at the RDS with 2,042 projects up for competition. Francess, there seems to be many entries this year in the agriculture and biodiversity section. What can you tell us about them?
Yes, Louise, if you want to find the next agri entrepreneur in Ireland, you could do no better than pop into the BT Young Science exhibition that's underway in Dublin this week. There are 550 projects from 219 schools across the country on display, and it's an understatement to say that they really are very impressive. On the agri front, there are really some very exciting entries. These include projects such as investigating the water filtering capabilities of plants and whether multi-species swards are really the future for sustainable farming. One of the agricultural projects which we caught up to investigated rewilding to increase biodiversity. The project was Wilder Farms, an investigation into farmers' attitudes towards rewilding and reforestation of farmland in Ireland. It was carried out by students from St Mary's Secondary School in County Cork. With the growing number of dog attacks on sheep, students Donal Malloy, Terry Heffernan and Kerry Sun from Moat Community School in County Westmeath also showcased a dog warning device at the exhibition. According to the students, one of the devices can be used per flock of sheep as the animals generally travel together. One other key agriculture project is around the subject of food waste, which is something that we're always talking about here in Agriland, and also how it could monitor animal waste gains. Matthew McVeigh, Joseph Clark and Killian McNeils from St Kieran's College in County Tyrone carried out a farming survey to gather feedback for this project. And a subject that's very close to our hearts, Louise, was a project that mapped out the visibility, equality status and experiences of women in agriculture. Sophie O'Shea and Martha McDonnell from County Cork sent out surveys to farmers asking questions such as, do you believe that women are treated differently in agriculture? What do you think the response was to that?
I think overall it would probably be a big yes.
Well, yes, you could be right. 66.7% of the male respondents said yes, and 81.8% of female respondents said yes. So that's definitely something to think about for the future.
Absolutely, Francess. And yes, there's lots of hard work being done at the RDS this week, and the finalists will be announced shortly, which you can find out on our website, Agriland.ie. Now, I'm afraid that's all we have time for on this week's episode of The Farming Week. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars or share it to anyone who you think might be interested. All the best for the week ahead from myself, Francess and Breffney.